Okay, let's set a scene for you. Imagine this massive oil tanker just off the French Atlantic coast near Saint-Nazaire. Pretty normal sight, right?
Right. Happens all the time.
Until French troops board it. I mean, armed military personnel, not your usual customs check.
Yeah, that's the bit that grabs you. And they weren't looking for the standard stuff, drugs, safety violations, that kind of thing.
No, they were after something else entirely. Evidence potentially linking this ship, the Boracay, which apparently also goes by the name Pushpa, to hostile drone flights, drones causing chaos over Europe.
It's a pretty startling development, really.
Yeah.
Because it forces security agencies, Western agencies, to think about threats intercepting in a new way.
How so?
Well, for years, you seize a ship, it's usually about economic crime, right?
Yeah.
Sanctions, busting, oil smuggling. But now, a tanker is being looked at as a potential mobile launch pad, or at least a support platform for airborne threats.
Wow, so the lines are blurring between maritime logistics and, well, air defense.
Exactly. The sea and the sky are suddenly connected in this covert way.
Okay, let's dive into this. We've got sources detailing this whole seizure, and they connect it up to two really big geopolitical themes playing out right now.
Which are Russia's shadow fleet, this huge network of ships, and this rising tide of what people are calling hybrid warfare across northern Europe.
Right. So our mission here for you listening is to get beyond those initial headlines. We want to understand how this one ship, the Boracay Pushpa, with its, let's say, questionable paperwork, fits into a much bigger picture.
A picture that seems to blend covert shipping, moving stuff under the radar, with this pattern of low-level airborne intimidation.
So the official reason for grabbing the tanker, President Macron confirmed this, was pretty mundane on the surface.
Yeah, the crew apparently couldn't produce the right documents about its nationality. Standard procedure, almost. Leads to an investigation for serious offenses.
But that wasn't the real trigger, was it? The underlying reason it was flagged goes back to the shadow fleet idea.
Precisely. That's the context that makes this whole thing significant. Section 1, really. The shadow fleet.
Okay, so let's define that. So shadow fleet, what actually is it? Why does Moscow need it so badly?
Well, it's not just a bunch of rogue ships. You have to see it as a strategically organized system. It's basically hundreds of vessels, mostly older oil tankers.
Older?
Yeah, often blacklisted or operating covertly. They've been bought up specifically to work outside Western regulations, mainly to dodge the sanctions on Russian oil exports. It's fundamental to Moscow's whole sanctions evasion game plan.
And our sources really paint a picture of how risky these operations are, not just strategically, but environmentally, too. These are aging ships, sometimes really run down.
Absolutely. I mean, they're inherently risky, even before you factor in the covert stuff.
Yeah.
The lack of proper insurance, avoiding Western ports, it makes them, frankly, an ecological hazard waiting to happen.
Well, and also a strategic tool.
That's the flip side. That lack of oversight makes them perfect. Their tactics are pretty sneaky. They do this thing called going dark, switching off their AIs, their tracking systems, to just vanish from screens. They also hop flags constantly, changing registered nationality. And they do ship-to-ship transfers way out in international waters, all designed to hide where the cargo actually came from.
But wait, if the goal is to be sneaky, why use these big old, possibly falling apart tankers right near areas where NATO is watching closely? Seems a bit counterintuitive.
But that's maybe the clever part of the hybrid strategy.
Yeah.
Because their main known crime is sanctions evasion, right? Economic stuff.
Right.
So if they get caught or hassled, Moscow can just frame it as, a dispute over maritime law or trade rules, not an act of aggression. It provides this perfect cover.
So they're like ghosts moving oil, but their untraceable, deniable nature makes them potentially useful for other things, too.
Exactly. Ideal potential staging posts for low-level covert ops, perhaps.
And that's where the Boracay Pushpa seizure becomes so interesting. It shifts the conversation from just moving oil to potentially active aggression.
And that whole shift, it really hangs on the tracking data, where this ship was.
Okay, let's get into that. Section 2, the Danish connection. This is where the ship's movements start looking less about oil prices and more about, well, European air defense.
Yep. Intelligence tracked the Boracay Pushpa sitting just off the Danish coast. Key dates between September 22nd and 25th.
And the timing there is significant.
Oh, absolutely. You could call it the smoking gun, potentially. That exact period, it lines up perfectly with this huge spike in unauthorized drone sightings. Drones that actually forced Copenhagen Airport to shut down for a while.
Wow. So it wasn't just one drone, it was a wave.
A coordinated wave of disruption, it seems,
Yeah.
happening right when these known covert vessels are nearby.
And you said vessels, plural. It wasn't just the Boracay Pushpa.
Correct. Sources point to other sanctioned Russian ships, too, specifically the Astral 1 and the Oslo Carrier 3. They were also spotted in the vicinity during those same incidents.
Okay, so that pattern starts to look less like coincidence, less like just random ships breaking sanctions.
It starts to suggest maybe a regional coordinated,
Wow.
well, staging operation of some kind.
And looking bigger picture in Denmark, these weren't isolated drone events either.
No, the problem had been growing. Authorities were reporting more and more suspicious drone flights over multiple strategic locations. Airports, yes, but also sensitive military sites. Even Denmark's largest garrison.
It sounds like a kind of low-level airborne siege. Testing reactions, sowing confusion.
That's a good way to put it. Maximum disruption, minimum outright conflict.
Now, we should add that note of caution here. President Macron himself urged everyone not to jump to conclusions, right? To wait for the investigation on linking the tanker directly to the drones.
Absolutely. The investigation is ongoing. That's important. But the fact the seizure happened at all really shows how these lines are blurring for officials on the ground.
Which brings us to Section 3, hybrid warfare and how Europe is responding.
Right, because Western officials are now pretty much universally using that term hybrid warfare to describe this kind of synchronized activity. The ships moving into position, the drones appearing.
It's a term we hear a lot, hybrid warfare. How are the sources defining it specifically in this Northern European context? What does it involve?
It's defined by the mix of tactics, all operating just under that threshold of triggering a full-blown military response. So you've got drone incursions like these, calculated violations of airspace, cyber attacks are a big part of it. And historically, using energy supplies as leverage energy blackmail.
And the goal?
To probe vulnerabilities, destabilize things, especially on NATO's eastern flank. But always trying to maintain enough doubt, enough plausible deniability so you don't trigger, say, NATO's Article 5, the Collective Defense Clause.
Harassment that's designed to look maybe like an accident or just below the radar of serious military action.
Pretty much. President Zelensky of Ukraine actually weighed in on this pattern. He assessed these incidents as basically tests of Europe's air defense capabilities. Poke the system, see how it reacts.
Which raises a huge question. What does NATO do when it suspects these ships, supposedly just dodging sanctions, might actually be enabling military surveillance or even aggression?
Well, the immediate reaction in the Baltic Sea after these incidents was predictable, but necessary. Vigilance went way up.
From high to extreme, sources said.
Yeah. NATO officials called it a pattern of increasingly irresponsible behavior. That demanded a much stronger presence, more eyes on the water.
And specific actions followed.
They did. We saw reinforced measures pretty quickly. On the ground, things like installing better radar systems at places like Copenhagen Airport.
Makes sense.
Intel gathering and reconnaissance patrols, both air and sea, were stepped up significantly. And, importantly, a key NATO warship, the German frigate FGS Hamburg, was sent to the area, both for surveillance and, deterrence, showing the flag.
So the immediate response is very much maritime surveillance focused. But the drones themselves suggest the long-term challenge is air defense.
Exactly, which leads to this really ambitious idea being pushed by the frontline states.
Yeah.
It's been dubbed the drone wall.
A drone wall sounds literal.
Yeah, maybe not a physical wall. It's more of a strategic concept agreed upon by countries like Poland, the Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and also Romania and Bulgaria. Basically, the states most exposed.
Okay, so what's the philosophy behind it, if not bricks and mortar?
It's about building this huge, multi-layered defensive shield, specifically designed to detect drones, track them, and then neutralize them, jam them, shoot them down before they can reach important targets like critical infrastructure or military bases.
So it's an admission that these low, slow, relatively cheap drones are now a primary weapon in this hybrid warfare toolkit.
Precisely. The wall concept involves layers, sophisticated electronic warfare for jamming, passive sensors that don't emit signals, and then actual interceptors, missiles, or guns for the kinetic kill. It's about hardening that whole eastern border against this very specific asymmetric threat.
And it recognizes that just watching isn't enough anymore. Defending your airspace is now tied to policing the seas where the platforms enabling these threats might be lurking.
That's the core takeaway. The Boracay Pushpa seizure really crystallizes it. how covert logistics, the shadow fleet moving oil, might be directly tangled up with immediate air defense problems, with airspace harassment.
Economic crime meets military aggression.
That's the convergence we're seeing. And European officials, while they're cautious pending the investigation, are also warning, look, this one tanker, it's probably just one piece of a much bigger puzzle.
A puzzle that cleverly mixes illicit shipping with these low-level hostile acts.
And the sheer scale makes it incredibly difficult to police. The sources emphasize just how vast this shadow fleet is. Hundreds of ships, constantly changing names, flags, turning off trackers.
Often falsifying data deliberately.
Right, it's designed to be murky.
Which leaves us, and you listening, with a really challenging thought to end on.
Yeah, given how huge, unregulated, and deliberately deniable this shadow fleet is.
Yeah.
How on earth can NATO and EU authorities consistently tell the difference, especially in real time?
The difference between a ship that's just trying to move oil illicitly for profit and one that's acting as a staging post for hybrid warfare. A deliberate act of aggression or covert logistics supporting it.
Making that distinction, policing that boundary, it feels like that's going to be a defining security challenge for Europe for a long time to come. How many more potential launch platforms are out there right now, hiding in plain sight as simple oil smugglers?